All right, yes, it is showtime. And as we move into showtime, we have lost we have lost Shane who was holding. All right, well, I'm here. Good evening.
Let's connect, connection box. Let's connect, connection box. Connection live, keep the conversation alive. Connection live, keep the conversation alive. Stay connected, the word is love. Tune in to Connection Live with the Connection Boss, Philip Paulwell, on Fridays on his Facebook page.
Good. All right, well, we're on as usual, Friday, 6 p.m. sharp, and we're ready to go. Today we're going to have a discussion involving Comrade Shane, who was on and now he's back on. Very good, Shane. Good to see you. And we are also going to be joined later by Comrade Lambert Brown. All right, so we're going to start Comrade Shane because I know this weekend people are looking forward to a long weekend. There was a time when it wasn't seen as a holiday as such because we were gearing up to do some serious work on Labor Day. But there are some persons now who see this as a weekend for rest and relaxation. But that's not how it is. We want to welcome again the man we call Sugar Shane, Comrade Shane Alexis, Doctor. And with him this evening, we have the great and dynamic Comrade Lambert Brown, the first time on Connection Live. Comrade Lammy, respect man.
Hi, Philip. Hi, Shane. Good afternoon, Irene, and out to all your listeners and viewers.
Thank you. We do this every week. We try to keep not only comrades, but believe it or not, we have some Levites who like what the comrades doing. And so we also
We
try
welcome.
to the independents as well, to keep them informed about critical issues. And as we are approaching Labor Day, we wanted to pause today to look at our labor scene, to look from where we're coming, 1938, and especially since independence. We are now 60 years, what have we achieved? And then to look at the current situation that begs for other questions, especially in light of the tremendous uncertainty, the conflicts that have arisen, and the turmoil that we are in. So I want to set the stage because somebody sent me something this week, and somehow I believe it. But tell me if I'm too bad. You tell me what both of you think about it. So here we go. The defining role of the trade union movement in the pre and the post-independence period has been shaped largely by the intellectual contribution of Norman Washington in the 1930s, Michael Manley through the 60s and 70s, and Lloyd Goodley the last 20 years. Norman Washington introduced the Trade Union Advisory Council with the express purpose of ensuring the sustainability of the nation's trade union movement. He situated the role of labor in the wider context of self-government and independence as forerunners to national development. That national development was to be driven by a working class agenda. Michael Manley sought to remove the psychological inferiority that affected the dignity and respect of labor. The labor laws of his time, more so the Labor Relations Code, is the most revolutionary piece of legislation to remove the vestiges of slavery and colonialism and to give workers pride and the equal status at the workplace. And the third person, Roy Goodley, he defined the role of labor in globalization, grounded in a philosophical mooring of the and saw to the establishment of the new IR, Industrial Relations, and three plans: efficiency, equity, and voice. Now, there's a name that is not mentioned, and that is Lambert Brown. Because from I was a boy, I used to hear about Lambert Brown and UAW. So Shane, let me start with Lambert today. And tell me, Lambert, what do you think about that statement and how you see the labor movement today as we get into Labor Day?
Well, I'll start, Comrade Paul, by saying that that statement's a little partisan. Because if you speak of the trade union movement in Jamaica, the name of Hugh Lawson Shearer, Colonel Charles,
Yes.
Harold Anderson, Cliff Stone from the BITU. You have to add to that Upton Cavan from the TUC, Jalvo, Eli Taylor, Drew Pope, Claude Reagan, and others who contributed over the years. Donovan Hunter. There are many persons who have contributed to a trade union movement that is broad, that over time emerged into the giant Jamaica Confederation of Trade Union, and before that the Giant Research and Development Center, JTURDC. So in post-independence, you have to speak to those roles as well. I have played a little role along the way, up on the shoulder of the greats before me. The reality is, the workers of the country in 1938 revolted from Kingston to Westmoreland to St. Thomas in the east. That's your parish, I believe, Philip, right? And they made changes because the conditions are very, very difficult. Some progress was made, but there are many things left undone. Among them, for example, is equality of the genders. Michael Manley in the 72 was revolutionary. Equal pay for equal work. Maternity leave with pay. That's 42 years ago that law was passed in 1979, 31st of December. And today we're still complaining because the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Finance still pays its workers the same as 42 years ago. And I think, and the PNP ought to say on record, that we are going to move public sector maternity leave to 3 months with pay, just as happened in some of the public bodies now. Petrojam, which you had responsibility for, pays, I believe, by union contract, 3 months maternity leave.
Yeah.
Why should somebody working in the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Local Government or the Ministry of Education be getting 2 weeks, but their counterpart in government getting more? I recall.
Lambert, 1 second, Lambert. I'm
Yeah.
going to ask our viewers just to share the live. People want to hear this. And
Yeah.
we were able to reach very far, I suspect, with the advertising. So let us share the live as you join, because we are getting a fundamental point that Lambert is bringing. Lambert, before you go on, I just want to see if Shane has any comments on the first statement that was made, because Lambert quite rightly pushed back on it. And let me see if Shane has a view on it as well.
Knight, actually, I can't say I always agree with Lammy, and I think we're both accustomed to that. But I think that this is something that we have to tip our hats to comrades like Lammy and others, as he mentioned, to have a rounded view. Having said that, I think that how my reading, my understanding, I wasn't there, but I've taken an interest. I'd like to point our guests to a book written by Comrade Arnold Bertram, Spree Bertram, on the modern Jamaican experience. And in it, he outlined not just the role of NW, but also of Bustamante. And while Bustamante had
Oops.
Have we frozen?
a lot
Yeah.
of heart, is who I think brought it together. And that was how our party was born later on in 1938. So I think it is fair to say that NW Manley, um, not just here in Jamaica, but perhaps throughout the Caribbean. I don't know what Lami's view is on that with some of our unions outside of the country. But the PNP is one of the, or is the oldest um, political movement in the English-speaking Caribbean. And I think it's key for comrades to remember that we are a movement born out of the struggle of the workers and the idea that we should uplift all Jamaicans, that every man must have a chance, there must be equal opportunity. And that was at a time when people of color in Jamaica couldn't vote for their own government. We never had our own government. And then later on, a constitution and things like that. So I think that it's important to recognize not just the labor movement and, as Lamy has said, NW and those big names, but people like Lamy who continue the struggle and the fight in the trenches with the workers and bring clarity to very
We're getting a little bandwidth trouble there, Lambert. But we need a minister for
very complicated.
We need a minister like you who got the telecom industry moving, and the bold move you made against opposition to crush the cable and wireless monopoly. Where would we be today if we were still under that monopoly? We wouldn't be having this program.
All right, so thanks very much. But so Shane has kind of agreed with you, but he has pointed out the role of the philosophers, Michael Manley. Huh?
Yeah, that's true. But let's bear in mind that in 1938, in preparing for this live film, I just look at a book about George Weeks. That's Trinidad.
Yeah.
I look at another book about Ashton Chase. That's Guyana. The entire Caribbean was suffering from the same problems of disrespect and demarginalization of labor. So the entire Caribbean suffered that. And different leaders throughout the Caribbean, Eric Williams and others, led a revolt. And bear in mind, that is in 1959 that the Cubans got their revolution, because they too had similar problems, and the French Caribbean had similar problems. So it's not unique to Jamaica, but we are thankful for our leaders, Norman Manley, Michael Manley, who committed to the trade union movement in '52, and the things that he learned from that and did for the country. So when Michael Manley became prime minister, he looked to see how he could change things. And let me give you one. And at that time, I was in conflict with Michael Manley. University workers had a strike in 1972. That's how Shane can now speak of a 5-day, 40-hour work week. Before '72, when Michael Manley agreed to start 5-day, 40-hour work week in the public sector on the 15th of April 1973, following the university strike. The university started it the 1st of April '73. Workers had to work 6 days a week. So many of the industries today who are enjoying a 5-day, 40-hour work week. It's because of that strike and the progressive views of Michael Manley, who then came with the Employment Termination Redundancy Payment Act, which meant that workers who were fired by the employer after many years of service could get redundancy payment. Respect for trade unions in 1975 with the Labor Relations and Industrial Dispute Act. And as I said, the Maternity Leave with Pay Act came in '79. And a lot of things were done that improved the life of the workers. not to mention the housing trust. So we say we can't give workers a big salary increase, but we can assist them with housing. And the housing trust was born out of discussion with the trade union movement and employers. And
Yeah.
that is why today Shane and Philip, many trade unions sit on the working on the housing trust board because Michael Manley enshrined that into law. Michael Manley believed in worker participation. He wrote a book called The Vice of the Workplace. So as we look back this Labor Day, looking back on 84 years to 1938, we're
Yeah.
looking at the struggles between 38 and now. Much progress have been made, but still there's more to be done. And I'm happy for a broadcast like this, Philip, because it allows people to stop taking things for granted.
Absolutely. You know, Shane, the last time you were on the program, the applause was good, but there were a few people who said you didn't speak enough about Michael Manley. They thought that you should change Michael Manley. Now, Lambert Brown put some things on the table in relation to what Michael was able to achieve. What say you?
Well, first of all, I have a fun fact for the audience. Did you know that in 1972 was the first national Labor Day project when Michael Manley decided that we had to pay tribute to the workers, to building communities rather. The first national project was in your constituency, was the Palisados Main Road that was cleaned and improved upon and trees planted, but I don't think they're there anymore. Having said that, there's no doubt, and I agree with Lammy wholeheartedly, that a lot has been done, and certainly Michael Manley propelled a lot of the work that was done before forward. The question is, what is the party doing now to advance the interests of the workers, to
All right, man. I see that Shane is having a challenge. By the way,
coalesce? The spirit of unity is what brought the workers together, brought the labor movement together. That was a glue, as I understand it, Lamy, that sort of got Jamaica moving in a direction. Now, these issues of housing, opportunity, the rights of workers still exist today. And it would seem that certainly in the last couple of weeks, there is a sense amongst the middle class and all working Jamaicans that enough is not being done to advance their interests. So in other words, we have to leave from what they call Wall Street and come to Main Street in Jamaica. And I think that's where the rubber has to hit the road again. Advance the arguments, and certainly when you look at the NHTs in my lifetime, and I'm 40 odd now, I can't say we've had an institution of that magnitude started again. And I think a generation is coming forward that has to think of something big and institute it in the same way that Michael did, with the workers, as in the average Jamaican, at the center of the thinking, and not just technical people or technocrats looking at profit margins or the IMF agreement.
all right. Very well, Shane. We get the drift. By the way, my technical director was mentioning that when we are not, when we're not speaking, if we can just mute so we can hear each other better. Okay, so very good point, Shane. Lambert, let us go back to the maternity leave issue, because I didn't know that this was a matter that is current. And some people called me this week to say that them hear Lambert talking about it. What is the situation?
Let me tell you what the situation is, Philip. The government of Jamaica, in responding to the trade unions' negotiated position about job compensation review, because it's not a gift from Nigel Clark, it's not a gift from the government. It is something negotiated by the trade union, signed off in 2015 with Peter Phillips, that there'll be a compensation review. The government wishes to make some changes, among them in relationship to some leave. So the government says, for example, they want to reduce some vacation leave. They want to red circle things like departmental leave. So a new person coming in would not get departmental leave. and they want to maintain maternity leave at 40 days pay. I am of the view that 40 days, which is 8 weeks, ought to be improved to at least 12 weeks. Not that they're reducing it, although they're reducing leave, which if a lady is going off on maternity leave, she may want to take some vacation leave, take some departmental leave to expand it beyond the 8 weeks by recircling some of those leave. In the future, those workers are not going to have to come back out, Dr. Shane, earlier than they would have been able to in the past. And I'm saying the government of Jamaica, including PNP government, must commit to making public sector workers in central government at 12 weeks with pay maternity leave. And that we can still stick with where we were 42 years ago. Science and everything has changed. So that is my contention, Philip, and to the viewers, that the maternity leave must come to 12. If you go to Petrojam, if you go to Housing Trust, if you go to UDC, if you go to other public bodies, they get 12 weeks. Why should the lady at the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Science and Technology be limited to only 8 weeks? I think the government, if you're reviewing things, you must move things upward for people, not to reduce the benefits, which in some cases they want to take away some of their allowances. So if you want to take some of the allowance, let's trade for upward movement in maternity leave. And most private sector agency pays 12 weeks anyway, certainly those where unions exist. So we
Uh,
shouldn't discriminate against.
Shane, I'm sure you agree with that. And probably as you have recently become a father, you want to talk a little bit about paternity as well?
Well, I certainly support Lami's position, and I think it's certainly a step in the right direction. I mean, you have countries where it can be a year, and that's something that then is a social investment. We speak a lot about crime problems, we speak about the social fabric, but it is well recognized in science that the bonding between the mother and child that occurs early in the first year, and of course,
Uh,
by
yes. Oh boy, Shane, we're missing some of what you're saying.
and therefore, for that reason,
All right. So hold on to that thought, Shane, while I bring back Lambert now, because Lambert,
I'm sorry, I'm just to
yes,
finish. I'm sorry, comrades. I don't know
go.
what the issue is, but just to say that this
Yes, it's a bandwidth issue, my brother.
movement, we must be prepared to lead the way, Comrade Paulwell, that as a progressive movement, these are the giant steps that need to take place. But again, my earlier point is that how this was achieved historically was through unity and finding common ground between all of us and our common interests in terms of upliftment, whether it is in your house or in your neighbor's house. And these are the kinds of transformational ideas that I think Lamy has touched on as it relates to labor that can help to advance not just the PNP, because what's good for Jamaica is good for the PNP, and what's good for the PNP is indeed good for Jamaica.
All right, very good, Shane. Lambert, there's a question that Hugh Campbell is asking. What is the status with the motor vehicle policy for teachers and public servants? And as you address that, probably we could just segue into the discussion about Labor Day and why Jamaicans shouldn't sit for a day at the beach, why Michael Manley instituted Labor Day.
All right. Let's start with the motor vehicle concession. Again, this is a case where the minister of Finance run ahead of the game and declare that he's going to withdraw these concession and put it into salary. To, by agreement with the unions, the government provide this concession because they couldn't provide the vehicles for people in the public sector. So having done that, there's what is called in law a legitimate expectation that you're going to get this. The minister cannot therefore unilaterally withdraw it. That could end up in court. The minister is now saying it's a proposal. And so if it's a proposal, we will then discuss it with him. Even though he has set the end of June for ending it, there's no agreement. And we're saying with the minister, to the Minister of Finance, as the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, and a matter like this, we need agreement. It can't be you dictating your way or the highway. And so for us, the dialogue continues. And nobody should be deprived of their concession until those negotiations are settled. That's our position. No, and the minister could find himself in court if he doesn't listen. At least last week he said these are proposals, no longer firm policy, but proposals subject to negotiation. So I understand the jitter by people, but for us it's two-sided in this. It's the government and the unions, and there have been no agreement yet. In respect to Labor Day, Michael Manley found it necessary to do voluntary labor and to call people to do voluntary labor. That gully down at Southside that's running down to the sea, Michael Manley as MP, Philip, saw how nasty it was, took off his Caribbean thing, went down there and said to people, we the citizens can clean this and volunteer. So he brought a sense of volunteer work to improve the community. At a time when we had what was called Empire Day, where we celebrated the Queen and so forth, and that 23rd of May was transformed into Labor Day. In the past, different unions would use that to have a march here and a march there, and sometimes it ended up in conflict between unions and parties. Michael Mann was able to bring the people together as a community and say, let's put labor into Labor Day. Let's not go for a holiday on the beach. Let's not go to an outing on some party, but let's improve our community. And the people catch on to it. Sadly, Philip, and to the handshake and to our viewers, the Jamaica Labour Party, for many, many, many years, opposed to the idea. Later on in government, they came around to seeing the value of putting work, voluntary work into the community, and that spirit lives on today. So at least this government can say, let's celebrate Labor Day. But the reality is that it's about moving from a fractious, warring event into working together to build our beloved country, Jamaica. And I'm glad that that is one of the legacy of Michael Manley that remains today. Put work into Labor Day, improve your community. But for the divisiveness of Siaga and the JLP, would have had a greater unity on this. But I give thanks for small mercies that together we are working across parties, both parties buying into it now. Labor Day. It's the same problem with eat what you grow and grow what you eat. Same problem with free education. These progressive things that Michael Manley put in were opposed by Siaga. And then later on they come around and say, oh, eat what you grow, grow what you eat. They're now trying to change it to say smart grower or something like that. I hear young Purnell coming with. But essentially, if we had allowed this country to develop along the lines that Michael Manley proposed, would have been further ahead as a country. But we got sabotage. Let's never forget the sabotage. But today, Labor Day lives on. And we thank Michael Manley for his vision.
Shane, what's your view and where you see Labor Day at this time?
Well, I think that Lamy has hit the nail on the head. We have to return to basics. I think there's a lot of value in building communities and getting participation
Oh no, boy, Shane is struggling with the bandwidth, man.
mobilize the country behind many of our programs. That grassroots participation is critical to nation building. This is not unique to Jamaica. Everybody knows I studied in Cuba. And whether you're a doctor, surgeon, a janitor, an accountant, there are days where everybody, including the students, had to do work, whether it was on the buildings that we lived in or in the fields. And this was good for team building. It's good to work alongside people in your community. It builds relationships. And as they say, who better than yourselves to look out for your interests? So I think that certainly I hope that in the next PNP government that we will revitalize that sort of approach and re-energize it so that we keep our hands firmly in the hands of the Jamaican people and ensure that we are building the communities from the ground up and not making the mistake that the Minister of Finance is making, dictating from the top down.
Lamy, one of our erstwhile viewers just sent me a note to say that Labor Day was actually started by Norman Manley in 1961.
I can take that historical fact, but that's Labor Day. But that person would tell you that on that Labor Day, because internationally, May 1st is International Workers' Day, is International Labor Day. We did not celebrate in Jamaica that May 1st. We don't have that tradition. In Grenada, and Shane would know this, and in the Eastern Caribbean, in Guyana, they celebrate May 1st. So take a day for the workers being declared other than May 1st. And a lot of that had to do with the fact because Labor Day came out of the struggles of May 1st came out of the struggles of female workers in Chicago who met serious tragedy. I believe a factory was burned down with some of them. But we have this, but on that for many years since 61, it was fractious. BITU marching one side, NW marching another side, other unions marching or joining up, and there was conflict. But along the way, Michael Manley and his friend Hugh Shearer, we begin to put behind us the divisiveness of the trade union. We're working together in the sugar industry. We're working together in other years, still competing with each other. But coming into the 70s, we were able to reduce that fractiousness, came together, and Michael Manley transformed what his father did from a day, a holiday, to a day of meaningful community work, community participation, building community facilities, something that today many communities go out on that Monday morning to paint up the wall, build a thing here, pedestrian crossing, to do useful work that is beneficial to the community. I'm not going to debate with Norman in 61 or Michael in thing. What I think your person would say that Michael Manley gave it meaning. And
Yes.
that is what is important.
Yes, well, he certainly popularized it. And today it is far more meaningful to us because of the efforts of Michael. Well, you know, these conversations on a Friday usually short and spicy, nice, and to the point. And I think we've been able to cover a whole heap of issues in the 35 minutes so far. I wonder for both of you, any final comments on this Labor Day, the issues surrounding labor? How do you see all of this turmoil panning out? Probably we could start with Lambert, and then we end with Shane.
Well, since you have Shane here, let me say it's a pity that the government has mishandled the COVID thing. So come Monday, we may be masking up, but there may be less interaction given the fifth wave of COVID is upon us. And already the government has cancelled or changed the nature of some of the activities for Labor Day. There'll have been church service, for example, on Sunday, and they're going to go viral. So we're facing a Labor Day in the face of COVID, but I know that many communities are going to be out there working. There are unfinished matters beyond the coming together on Labor Day, affecting the workers of Jamaica. And as a vice president of the Jamaica Trade Confederation of Trade Unions, I pledge our continuous struggle to improve the lot of the workers in the country. And we say happy Labor Day when it comes on Monday.
Thanks so much, Lambert. Shane.
Well, I think that this has been a very useful program, Philip. I think that at least we have marked as a party, and you have led the way in this conversation, recognize that Labor Day is not just a day at the beach, that we're able to get across, not just here in Jamaica, but right across the diaspora. I see comrades joining from Guyana, New York, and all over. I know you're well connected. But the fact is that we must understand our history in the context of what's happening. A lot that is happening now happened in 1938. And that is how the PNP was born. It's important that we remember as a political organization what our political roots are. And those roots are deep in the hearts of Jamaicans who have struggled for equality for these 80-odd years, and they must not be forgotten. Many have helped to advance the cause of women, men, children, right across the board. But we must now build on that fire in the PNP. Ensure that we are listening to the workers. As Lamy said, consultation and collaboration are critical to the advancement of the Jamaican worker. And I certainly, as a former president of a trade union myself for a short time, have seen how difficult the fight is. It's tooth and nail. You know, as a former minister, that there are long requests from the workers that must be discussed. And not everything is possible, but each step should be a step in the right direction. And at the moment, I think that the government is losing sight of that. I think as a responsible opposition, we must remind the government and the Jamaican people that we must put Jamaica first. And in order to advance Jamaica, the workers and their families must be able to advance. A man must see how he's going to put food on the table, take care of his family, ensure that in his later days, he's able to live a dignified life and see out his days in peace without pain. I think those are the sorts of issues that we must continue to fight. We must ensure that we support our own union, that
Okay.
we must ensure that we are interpreting, Philip, the issues of the day, that we can't only use our history to outline what the problems are, but we must start to look at modern solutions. What is the average tertiary educated graduate coming out to do? What are their hopes and aspirations? Because remember, Jamaica, thanks to NW Manley and others, Michael included, in case I get criticized, Michael Manley as well, all the Manleys have advanced us from illiterate peasant farmers to now tertiary educated graduates. There are many who are working in different industries that need representation. The BPO sector comes to mind, the hospitality industry and others, that we must ensure that we are providing modern solutions to deal with modern issues. Paternity leave would be the next step, Lamy, for example, that we can't leave the fathers behind, because there's a criticism that many of the fathers are not participating in the lives of their children. So
and thankfully, Shane, there's some company giving paternity leave. This is something that I believe the former leader of the PNP, Peter Phillips, had committed to, and we must do this. But could I just say before Shane finished Philip, you and I need to ensure that in the parliament, freedom of expression is retained. And what happened yesterday with the Minister of Education trying to shut down the president of the JTA never be allowed to happen. I was thankful in the breach yesterday to stop it, but we must prevent this government from acting as dictators.
Respect, Lambert. I agree with you, and that continue the comrades. Love your militancy, and tremendous respect to you, Comrade Shane and Comrade Lambert. This has been another excellent live based on the comments that I'm getting. I really want to thank both of you, Lambert, for the first time you're coming on. People are going to be requesting you a whole lot more now. Comrade Shane, you have returned. Really appreciate it. We want to wish all Jamaica a happy and productive Labor Day come Monday, the 23rd. Thanks again, guys. Have a good weekend. And the Connection Boss is tuning out until next week, Friday at 6 p.m. in the eye. One love.
Bless you, bless you, bless you.
Respect. Thanks.
Blessings, comrade. Respect.